Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, Optimizing Azure and AVD. My name is Akila, and I'm an Associate Product Marketing Manager here at Sherweb, and I'll be your host for today. Before we dive in, I'd like to cover a couple of housekeeping items. First, this session is being recorded, and you'll receive a link to the recording along with the presentation after the webinar. Second, we will be having a Q&A session at the end, so please feel free to submit your questions through the chat or the Q&A window so that we can address them during that time. And lastly, at the end of the webinar, there will be a short survey. We'd appreciate if you could take a few moments just to complete it so that we can hear your feedback and thoughts. On to today's session. So today we have Jason Lambert, who will be presenting. Jason is Sherweb's advocate of Azure solutions. He is a cloud infrastructure veteran with over 10 years of experience assisting MSPs in enhancing their Azure skill sets and building IaaS solutions for their clients. So for today's webinar, we will cover cost-saving strategies, how to use Azure Advisor to get personalized recommendations for resource optimization, how to configure alerts, how to create strategic spending plans, and how to make Azure billing more predictable. And now I'll hand it over to Jason.
Hi, thanks, Akila. Great introduction. I'm just going to pass by my picture. Thank you for everybody investing your time to go over Azure and AVD and how we optimize it. Here at Sherweb, we're a trusted cloud advisor for Azure via Microsoft, as well as we'd like to be a trusted advisor for you, our valuable partner. Couple of things that we can take advantage of, and I just want to make sure that you're aware. Partner enablement, we're here to help you grow your business. And so if you've been tracking with the presentations that we've been doing through marketing, we've also got a series of weekly Wednesday webinars, and these are all around Microsoft Azure. We're super thrilled to be able to come alongside you. If you're interested or need assistance in strategizing around how to build your business around Microsoft Azure, if you're looking for opportunities around Microsoft Azure, if you need training in Microsoft Azure, we can certainly, we're here to help. Just let us know what you need, and our team will jump in and give you a hand. The best way to get in contact with our team is to reach out to your account manager, your sales contact, and just let them know you'd like to have a conversation with our Azure team. And we can help you not only on partner enablement, but also solution design. So if you have maybe you've never done Azure before, and you've got an opportunity that you believe your customer would be interested in moving out to Azure. I know customers are talking about it a lot. Our Azure business is growing really nice over here at Sherweb with the partners that we're currently working with. We can help you on the solution design. So we have a team of pre-sales architects that I'm going to go over with in a minute. They can help you put together the design, and we can help you deploy the design as well. So we have a pro services team that can do everything you would need from a deployment perspective. We'll set up a statement of work. We'll let you know, from A to Z, what the where we would start with deployment all the way through to where we would end and put it in production. So that's available to you as well. And then optimization, it's always great, when you move out into the cloud. Optimization may be a new strategy for some of you. On-prem, we can buy resources. Usually the resources that we buy on-prem, servers, etc., are far beyond the required needs of the applications. So we really don't have to do a lot of optimization on-prem, unless perhaps you're in a VMware environment and you're using some of the VMware tools to help optimize some of that infrastructure. So to some degree, you may be familiar, but we also can help you optimize your Azure and AVD usage too. Our pre-sales team, so our extended Azure team, these people work with your account manager, and your account manager knows how to get them on the call. Ron Farrar is our business development executive. He's been in around the Azure business for several years, as well as Neil Kosh, who is a solutions architect. So when we talk about being able to give you a solution design, from A to Z, Neil's a great resource. And then Christian is also a pre-sales solutions resource. I am as well. I'm your advocate, the advocate around Azure here at Sherweb, and I'm super excited to work through and talk through different technologies in Microsoft Azure. At the end, when we do our survey, there will be an opportunity for you to let us know, what kind of content that you're looking to understand. Where are your challenges, and how can we help you, remove those roadblocks so that you can continue to find Azure opportunities through your customer. So we're going to dive right into optimizing Azure. Microsoft Azure is a fantastic tool set. I want to be very clear. A lot of people feel like, once they get into Microsoft, they know that Microsoft, or I think there's an assumption that Microsoft takes care of everything, right? You move your virtual machines in there, and Microsoft uses their magic potion, and everything's up and running. And that's actually not really true. Microsoft Azure is a tool set, and Microsoft has created a very large tool set. And to help you kind of optimize it and bring it down. So for the years that I've been working with MSPs and VARs, I talk about really 5 main features of Microsoft Azure. The first one would be in front of you, that's virtual machines. Then we would be talking about storage, networking, backup, and disaster recovery. Sure, there's other services that Microsoft has available, to include Entra ID, right? So Azure Active Directory has now been rebranded Entra ID. Same features as Azure AD. Microsoft just felt Entra ID gave a better position for the technology, being you need to get a lot of that set up as you're getting your environment set up for MFA and user roles, whether it's role-based roles or identity management roles. We want to have those things kind of set up in the beginning so that people get the right access to the right services at the right time as they're moving along. So optimizing your Azure. So if you've got a customer now that's already in Microsoft Azure, some of the ways that you can optimize your Azure, we're going to talk about the monitoring tool in a little bit, but really making sure that, so the most important thing that is running in Azure is your workload. It's not necessarily the size of the virtual machine. It's making sure that your virtual machine is being properly utilized. So if you've got a virtual machine in Azure and it's only actually 20% utilized, there's a possibility that the machine that you've put in there is much bigger than the workload that it's running. So if you can get that machine running at 70, 80, 90% utilization and it's ticking along very, very well, that's a great way to optimize your Azure virtual machines. Storage is also another way to optimize your infrastructure, making sure that the correct storage is being used for the correct application. For example, Microsoft has everything from spinning disk to SSD to premium SSD, high performance SSD. So if you're utilizing, let's say, premium SSD for a file server, for example, depending on the workload, that it may not be the best use of a premium SSD drive in Microsoft Azure. It may be better to step down to maybe a spinning disk or an entry-level SSD drive. Managing your network and using an accelerated network through Microsoft Azure can certainly help your performance within the service. Configuring your monitoring, again, we're going to talk about that a little bit later, but making sure that your monitoring and your alerts are set up to be able to let you know when you're having issues, well, let you know when Azure is having issues, with their workloads, etc., and making sure the right people get the alerts at the right time so that they can log in and be able to remediate whatever is ailing in Azure. That would be certainly popular. Also, if you're in, we're going to talk about AVD, but I've got it on my list here. Scaling in and scaling out is a good strategy around Microsoft Azure. So if you have a workload, and let's say, so Active Directory, for example, if you've got a couple of hundred people in the organization, Active Directory is important because every single person in the organization at some point when they log into the system is going to use, Active Directory resources. But on the other hand, if early in the morning when people get set up, you may have a lot of people coming in at the same time. So you may have to scale out and use multiple servers to manage that workload. And then as the day progresses, you may be able to actually spin down to smaller virtual machines or a less number of virtual machines, because throughout the day, as people come and go, maybe maybe it's 20 people that are coming in and leaving, not 200 people all at the same time. So that could be a way for you to optimize your Azure virtual machines. One resource that a lot of people, when they move into Azure, overlook, and from our experience is a very critical resource, is tagging. I think a lot of people, when you get started in Azure, especially when you get started, you get a couple of machines set up, maybe a couple of virtual desktops set up, and maybe the customer is relatively small, and so that's cool. Then the names that you've created to identify the virtual machines, maybe your host pools and your virtual desktops, the naming convention that you set up is really cool, is really good. The challenge is as the customer decides, starts to grow, let's say year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5, now they've moved, several machines into Azure. They've got maybe dozens and dozens of people running virtual machines. What's happened is that if you've not tagged your resources, you may not know what virtual machines go with what maybe departments or teams of people. And so as you're trying to manage this, it makes it difficult because nothing is actually ever correlated with another piece. So we would strongly encourage you to use tags. If you had a virtual machine set up, and let's say you have two storage, so two SSD drives attached to the virtual machine. Let's call it an operating system, and we'll say, it's an application server or file server, and so you've got maybe an E drive and an F drive, right? So you've got 2 or 3 different drives there. You've not tagged them, so you've allowed Microsoft to automate the process of naming them because it's simple. You can do that. And then let's say a couple months down the road or a year down the road, that application or server is no longer required. So then you think, okay, well, I'm just going to delete the server. I'll deprovision it. And you go ahead and do that. What happened that you missed is the storage that was attached to the virtual machine is still on and available. And we didn't know to turn it off because we assume when we turn the virtual machine off and deprovision it, that the storage would go away with it. But the reality is that storage can be attached to a different machine over time. So if you tagged all that, then you would know, okay, I'm turning off this virtual machine Now I got to look, I'm going to search via all my, via tagging for all the machines that are listed with the same tag, or let me say, not machines, but resources that may have been attached to the machine. They're all within the same tag. Now okay, well, I've deleted the virtual machine. I don't need these SSD disks anymore. I don't need this resource group. I don't need this network per se. And it's super easy to go through and make sure that you just clean all that stuff out. And again, small customer, couple of things happening. Sounds like a little bit of extra work that I don't really need to do. I don't want to do. Technically, I don't have to do it. But when that customer grows, and let's say, even if they change, let's say they change managed service providers. So you've got a new customer that fired their old service provider, and they have you as a new service provider. You don't necessarily know kind of where everything is supposed to be or what's serving what. If they original service providers have tags, it makes it a little bit, or a lot actually, clearer. Let me move on from here. Oops. Load balancer. I kind of talked a little bit about auto scaling. Also, there, depending on the workload, load balancers aren't always used. And again, if you use a load balancer, it really helps to manage out your customers' consumption as it being outside of Azure, and that can help create optimization strategies for the customer. Optimizing AVD. So optimizing AVD, you can certainly work to tune the operating system, be it Windows Server or the desktop applications. If you install the native version of Windows 11, it has bloatware within it. If you can get that cleaned out and actually have applications and services that the user needs to be productive on their day-to-day job, that would really help from an optimization perspective. Also, optimizing the time that it's needed. For example, if your customer is a 40-hour-a-week shop, they only work 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, it doesn't make sense to have the infrastructure running 24 hours a day. You can actually schedule it to come on and come off. And really a better tool than using Microsoft in this aspect would be a company called Nerdio. Nerdio has an incredible platform that they use. It's Nerdio Manager, and you can schedule in Nerdio that I want the system to come on, let's say Monday morning at 7 a.m. Because we got some early risers that get in, and have it go off at 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. and be able to have your backup if you want to do a backup on Azure using Azure Backup to be able to cover. Oh, I got to scoot down here. I didn't change my slide. Got too excited talking away. Having your backup run before it either like they shut back down, or you can also use auto scaling in AVD around your session hosts. So if you have, let's say, 3 or 4 different session hosts during the business day, those 3 or 4 session hosts will be running at the same time, and you can have them obviously supporting all your different profiles and workers. But as let's say the day scales down toward the end of the day, you can have auto scale set up so that if CPU utilization gets to say 30%, will actually shut down the 4th machine, and then as continues to go down, then we can shut down the 3rd machine and the 2nd machine, and then finally you just have maybe the 1 machine running, or you're gonna shut that down because it's 6 o'clock at night and the customer doesn't really need it till say 7 or 8 o'clock the following morning. Managing profiles, being able to configure user profiles, including settings and preferences, so that the customer or the customer, the user is extremely efficient, and their system, their desktop is fine tuned, and being able to make sure that it's optimized, that you are able to log in from your mobile device, your tablet, your laptop, desktop, an HTML5 browser. Most of the new browsers are all HTML5, I believe. That really gives the users the best experience. And again, making sure from a hard drive perspective, like if I'm setting up profiles for my users, do I need SSD? I would probably suspect you're not going to use spinning disk, but is it SSD or premium SSD? So we've got those users, quickly accessing the data they need, writing the documents, creating the presentations, and being successful in their workday. Also setting up the audio. So when you get into AVD, you can optimize your audio and video settings so that when you're doing presentations like this one to customers, that the audio and video is really good. Or even just working on Microsoft Teams, where you're having a meeting, you want to make sure the audio and video is very clear and crisp and working well. So those are some strategies. There's more, certainly more, but we've only got ourselves roughly about an hour, and I want to kind of talk to as many parts of it as I can. So if something that I've spoke about tweaks your interest, or you have a question after the webinar and you're not sure how to get your question answered, we'd love to answer your questions. So don't hesitate to reach out to your account manager, let them know you have a question, you want to talk to the Azure team, and they can get a call scheduled up, or an email swap to get your questions answered. But it's super important for us to ensure that we're helping you remove roadblocks that you have when it comes to selling Microsoft Cloud. Could be more education. We talked about this. So I'm going to skip that slide. Using using Azure and AVD together. I kind of talked about it to some degree in the beginning part of my presentation, but not only are you setting up your host pool, your networking, your virtual desktops for your users, you get the ability to set up GPU enabled. So if you have graphics users or CAD users where the NVIDIA GPU is important, I believe it's the NV series of family that you get set up. You probably, with a graphical high demand user, would set up their own virtual machine, and you can do that. You can set up and give them access to the hardware basically through the virtual machine, so they get to take advantage of as much power as needed. You can also set up your applications. So you've got standard Azure workloads, application, file server, AD. If you want to do a domain server, or you use Entra ID, or you've got SQL databases that you need to run to help your customer be more effective in the cloud. You can certainly set up all those using Azure and AVD and best practices on both. And if you're not familiar with Azure best practices, please reach out to us. We can help you understand Azure best practices. And what I've always said to when I do these presentations is a lot of partners look at Azure as something different. And yes, doing what you did on premises, setting up servers, setting up networks, setting up endpoints, setting up firewalls, and your network, all of that is different in Azure, right? You're not setting up physical hardware. You're not, you're setting up virtual hardware or virtual machines. And so with that being said, you got to learn how to use the platform and the tools. But all the best practices that you use to manage the on-prem environment are needed to manage your Azure environment too. What does that mean? Well, patch management, updating, virus protection, all the things that you would do on-prem in your, if you're an MSP in your managed services, being proactive to make sure that the on-prem environment's running and being effective. You want to bring those strategies to Azure as well. Microsoft does take care of the Azure infrastructure as a whole. They've invested, I believe they've got somewhere around 3,000 security people that are on staff. There's over 60 regions in Microsoft Azure. So across the world, you can use services as required. And Microsoft today is a real behemoth when it comes to security. They're if you know Gartner Magic Quadrant, Microsoft is actually in a lot of security scenarios now with the leaders, which is incredibly interesting, because years ago, you wouldn't really, you'd look for any other security solution but a Microsoft solution. But the Defender series on Microsoft for server, for endpoint, is fantastic. Like, it really, really does a good job. Microsoft Azure. Oh, file shares. We talked about that. So if you have a file server on-prem, and let's say the customer isn't maybe so comfortable of uplifting and moving everything into the cloud, that's fine. You can set up a hybrid environment where you've got public cloud and private cloud with your customer's infrastructure. One of the key benefits of what a customer gets when they move to Azure, especially in the SMB space, is they get enterprise infrastructure. So you can run a very small server in Azure for pennies on the dollar, like literally, nickels, dimes, quarters per hour to have a server run. I used to talk with a partner who, before Entra ID became as well put together as it is, and I know it's still in an evolution, he used to set up domain controllers in Azure for his SMB customers, and he thought it was fantastic because once he got it set up, he would downsize it to a smaller machine just to run, policies and logins, etc. And he, it used to cost his customer like, I don't know, $20, $30 a month to have a domain controller, maybe even less. But so there is strategies around having utilizing Azure in the small medium business space, and one of the other ones is around file share. So if you can set up Azure files against an internal file share, and as your customer uses the information, let's say there's a lot of, maybe 20% of the file servers used like 90% of the time. You can have those files local, and then like in Azure, if you use OneDrive, you could have the other 80% of the data that's not used a lot actually up in Azure, and just have those pointers to show on-prem where it actually is. And then over time, if let's say that server were to fail and the file server failed, maybe the customers got comfortable enough, they could actually move the file server into Azure and then just be able to map the drive back through Azure File to the user desktop, so they get access to the file shares that they need. So that's a really cool service that, that's on the Azure side of it, not necessarily on the, in the AVD part of it, but it's a service that you can bring and use across the board. Azure Backup, we talked about that. Azure Backup is a really cool service. It integrates very, very well to your servers, database servers, also your desktops, and it's the only service in Azure that doesn't have egress fees. So moving data to and from Azure through Azure Backup is free. You're just actually paying for the service. So But on the other hand, I also said to you that Azure is a toolbox. So I'd like to say this is a great example where, as an MSP, you probably already have a backup service that you use for all your customers. You can use that backup service in Microsoft Azure too. You want to back up their desktops, back up your customer servers. I'm not going to pick on a vendor, but whatever vendor you may use, you can use it up there. You can use Azure as a backup target if you wanted to, or you could have an offsite backup target. Just keep in mind, if you do have an offsite backup target where you're using egress data, that you're being charged for that egress data as well. So whatever the cost of the service is plus egress data would be the total cost to the customer. Your egress data may also be more expensive on the initial backup because you're doing all sorts of data, and then a lot of backup services that they do incremental data over time where that charge may come way down. So it may be moot all in all, but it's something to consider. And again, like, you're able to bring services. The other service that I wanted to talk about in making it more efficient is Azure Firewall. I don't actually have a slide for it, but there are customers that, maybe they have a Juniper, a Sophos, a Cisco, Fortinet firewalls on. Well, here I am talking about vendors. I said I wasn't going to do that. But they like that technology and they do it on premises, and they don't want to, maybe you guys don't want to have to learn how to connect those firewalls to the Azure firewall. Like, that's a bit of a learning curve. What you could do is go to the Azure marketplace and find the corresponding firewall from the vendor. So let's say it's Cisco, right? You can find a software firewall on Cisco. I think it's a CSA instead of an ASA. And you could deploy that in the customer's environment. And then you guys already have the skills to be able to manage that Cisco firewall. So it becomes more optimized because you don't have to go out and learn how to do the Azure one. You've already got the skills. So those are just other ways to make it more efficient when you get up in Azure. I know I'm getting halfway through my deck. I'm gonna flip that back over again. Azure Resource Manager and the templates on Azure Resource Manager. I have a couple notes. So Azure offers us a capability of for a variety of different assets to make it easier to deploy by using templates, right? So you can use you can use Azure Resource Manager templates to automate the process of delivering services. And it doesn't matter how you do it, whether you do it through command line, through what is it called? The GUI. I'm thinking of PowerShell or Azure PowerShell to deliver services. They all run through Azure Manager, Resource Manager, and are all set up in the same fashion in Microsoft. So it's a great way to just manage your overall workloads. You get the exact. I'm not going to get into that in this mode. You said, nah. It can be done manually or automatically, and combined with scaling up for hybrid scaling. I haven't done a lot with Azure Resource Manager, so I'm a little bit light on this part, but it's certainly something to get into and take advantage of. And the more that you can automate services within Microsoft, the more effective and optimized you can be when servicing your customer. These topics, like when I'm talking about Azure Resource Manager, Azure Advisor, Azure Advisor also includes setting up alerts, which we're going to talk about here as well. I could do training, like an hour-long training on each one of them, or a couple hours, really getting into the different services. Azure Advisor, so it's a great service that's set up within Microsoft Azure that actually will look at your infrastructure that's set up and give you, oh, my bad, it'll give you recommendations. So it's telling you here, on the cost of virtual machines, you've got, high, medium, and low impact that, you may or may not want to address depending on what services are under the hood, right? So there's 15 impact resources. There's 522 impact resources around security. There's also the security gateway, secure score that you can take advantage of on the security side and it's based on best practices where you can skill up or change services and provide better security footprint strategy. So basically, walking step by step. Maybe there's machines that haven't got their Defender updated. So once you get those updated, it changes your security score and drives a higher number. So you can see it. It's a great place on Azure Advisor to come in and look at different things that are happening within your customers' infrastructure on Azure to ensure that it's running effectively and efficiently and optimized. And if it's not, then you've got strategies on how to go in and optimize and make it more efficient. I was going to show this to you actually in the Azure portal, but my challenge was I don't have enough resources running within my own Azure subscription to be able to populate the presentation. So I thought it was for the time and the presentation more effective to print off some screenshots of activity and be able to share that with you. Also, when you talk about optimization, the Azure Advisor will give you notifications around workload. So as you can see here, this machine that's running is a very large machine. I don't know if you can see my mouse across the screen, but it's 22. I'm just looking at the first line. $2,200 is the potential saving of running this machine. It's not overly utilizing the CPU, so it's a good opportunity to resize the machine to be more effective. You want to make sure that your workloads are running, at a good percentage of capacity. If it's 70, 80%, 90%, obviously you don't want the workload to be above the machine's capacity, but that's the value that Microsoft Azure brings to you, is you have the ability to use bigger machines or smaller machines depending on your customer's activity. And then you can, Microsoft's getting really good at helping you automate the process of making some of those changes. So you can't, and this is a little sidebar, you can't take a virtual, so let's say it's a D2 machine. Microsoft's not incredibly creative around the different names of machines within their family of servers. But basically, it's if you had a D2 machine, I can't remove or change the CPU, the RAM, the storage on that D2 VM. But what I can do is I could tell Azure through the portal that I need a bigger machine with more CPU, more RAM, more storage, or less. And within the sake of a reboot, I tell it I want the machine. I say go. It'll actually shut down the machine that you have, and then bring up the machine that you require, and that will change the customer price. Either it will reduce or increase the price depending on the machine that you brought into production through that change. So that's some of the challenges. I don't know if you have a small SMB customer base, you're probably not needing to change them up or down as far as machine sizes. Once you get it dialed in, you're probably going to stay there consistently. I would say it's when you get into larger customers, that have more resource and infrastructure, you may find yourself moving around using larger machines or smaller machines or auto scaling, depending on the workload. And that's also when you think about, you may think, well, if my customer moves into Azure, it's going to affect, some of the work I do for them, because, I don't necessarily have to do hardware refreshes anymore because Microsoft takes care of all that at Azure. And that's very true. But when you talk about getting a customer set up in Azure, and then they're going to grow over time, there's going to be project work along the way. There's going to be, Microsoft's not finished in building Azure. Like a lot of partners that we've talked to, and we've started doing partner interviews where we're reaching out to partners to hear how we're doing at Sherweb, how the partner's doing, what are some of the challenges, what are some of the opportunities that are available for our relationship. And one of the biggest comments that we get back is it's so hard to keep on top of all the changes that are happening in Microsoft Azure. And it's true. And I would say to you, over time, today your customer got set up with, let's say, a couple of dozen AVD instances. You got a couple of host pools, a couple of applications, maybe a database and a file server, let's say that, and they've got 365 kind of, they're already in 365. In the following year, there may be an opportunity. Microsoft comes out with different services. There's a way for you to provide optimization to the customer by doing a project that helps bring in a new service and reduce some of the spend that the customer has on certain parts of the existing service that they have. I'm kind of making this up as I go, but I've seen it happen over time. The 10 years or so that I've been in and around Microsoft Azure, that things change, and the customer needs your help to be more optimized, more efficient and effective, and more productive ultimately in their organization. And so those are things that you guys are going to be able to bring. I want to move on. As you can see here, this is your advisor score. I talked about your secure score. That's also available, but your advisor score here is 88% on this slide based on the work that you've done. You've got cost savings over here, security, reliability, operational excellence, performance, and it's, my apologies. Microsoft also has got, they're starting to highlight like things that can be quick fix, right? And running scripts. I think I got to scoot on here a bit. Yeah, we're on time. So I want to get into Azure Alerts. So basically, Azure Alerts, I got a couple of notes here as well. That's not what I was looking for. Here. Okay, so Azure Alerts, you can put alerts on as you log into the system. If you're in a service, so I actually have, I don't know if I can share it. I'm not gonna, should I? Can I? I don't think I can. You guys probably can't see it anyway. Oh, maybe you can. Portal. There it is. I wanted to get in here. Where is it? I thought I had this set up. If I go under in the portal, I'll do it real quick here. I've got app services set up. So this is my app service, and I'm running Nerdio Manager that I spoke about earlier. And let's say I want to set up alerts. Once I click on the service, I've got this whole menu come up here. I can come down here and I can say, I want to set up an alert for it, and I can create the alert. So I can either create the alert by going through like the service, the resource, or from the server, etc., I can go through and create alerts, or I could just literally go into alerts, and then I could go ahead and create alerts for my services. So I want to come back to this slide because this is where on, box one down here, you've got your Azure resources, and you've got the ability to do Azure monitoring, metrics, logs on these services. And based on how you want to create the alert, you create the alert rule. So if it's a virtual machine, I can look in here, the signal of an alert would be CPU utilization. So if my CPU utilization is greater than 80%, and the condition has been met, then I'm going to create an alert, or I'm not, Azure will. It'll create an alert, and it's going to process to the rules that have been set up. And if the rules are met, then it will take action. So you could point it to, per se, a run book. And the run book could be, like reboot, shut down the machine, or custom run books that you create, depending on what you want it to do. And then you can be notified, or multiple people can be notified via email, chat, or web messaging, or phone calls, voice calls. I don't think that it would say anything more than like you have an alert if you set up the voice side of it. But certainly you can set these alerts up for all the different services that you have and be able to get notifications depending on where what the alert is. Let me get down here. Strategic spending plans in Azure. So understanding your business requirement. Understanding the business requirement workload for the customer is hugely important. Again, to help you along your way, here's a scenario that I like to share, and I've seen it in the past where a partner is interested, or the customer is interested in moving to the cloud, and the partner, you guys are interested in helping the customer move to the cloud. And over time, you've created an inventory of servers that you've deployed for your customer and what they do. And you'll come to us at Sherweb. I've done this many, many, many times. And I've taken this list of inventory and I've put it into the Azure calculator. And if you're not, if I'm making you cringe talking about the Azure calculator, there's actually a video being published. If I don't know if it's published yet, but it'll be on YouTube under the Sherweb YouTube site, and it will be on the Azure calculator. We do have a video for it, but suffice to say, we do this inventory, we put it in the estimator, we send it back to you, you get sticker shock, and you send it to the customer, and the customer gets sticker shock, and then you talk about TCO and ROI, and the customer falls back to physical server because it's more predictable, and it, if you amortize it over a number of years, it's more cost effective. What happened there was you guys were looking at the physical hardware, not the workloads. So if you look at the workloads, and if you go back 10 or 15 years ago, when your customer said they wanted a new application, you got the DVD, you flipped it over, you said, hey, this isn't going to run on your existing virtual machine, or existing server. You're going to have to get a new server to run this application, and that drove a sale. The same concept is true today in Azure, but for different purpose. So go back to the minimum system requirements. Now go find a virtual machine that's in Azure that supports those minimum system requirements, and use your professional experience to know that, well, okay, you're saying an accounting software needs 2 cores, 8 gigs of RAM, and 100 gigs of storage to run. It could if one person was using it, but I know 8 people are in the company are going to be using it all the time. I know that server is going to need more performance. I'm going to get a server that's a little bit bigger, but I'm not necessarily going to get a server that's as big as the physical server that was on-prem running this application. So that's another way of creating strategic spending And if you don't want to do that, let's say you have 20 or 30 servers and you don't want to go through that process for every single one, reach out to our team. Within an Azure subscription, you get access to the migration tool, and in the migration tool is an assessment tool. If you run the assessment tool on premises, you'll get the answers that you're looking for in a more effective way, so that when you do get pricing out of the Azure calculator, it lines better to what the customer may have been paying on-prem. So I think I'm going to put the brakes on there. Oh, I didn't finish this. Leverage Azure reserved instances and savings plan. So I got a few more minutes. Reserved instances, if you have steady state workloads that you're moving into Azure, meaning that they're going to be the same today and forever, then a reserved instance is really great. We can help you get there. You can get a 1 year or a 3 year. And basically what you're saying to Microsoft is, we're committing to you, Microsoft, on a 1 or a 3 year term. Microsoft then gets to better manage their infrastructure, and they'll give you up to 70% off on that workload. So if you're looking for optimization and reducing costs, reserved instances could be one way. Savings plan could be another way. So let's hypothetically say you're using a bunch of different virtual machines, potentially, and the customer has an appetite of a certain amount of spend for the machines that they want to use, for the infrastructure that they want to use. Then Microsoft will give you upwards of 60 or 70% off, depending on the infrastructure that you put together. You kind of let them know what families you're going to be in. And you can have a savings plan. So that's more or less unpredictable workload where you can get to reduce cost. Azure hybrid benefits to save on licensing costs. So if you've got Azure reserved instances, then you could get Windows subscriptions licensing through AHB and deploy that on the server to reduce cost. Take advantage of Azure. Okay, so spot instances are virtual machines that are underutilized, where if you have, let's say you just have a database that you need to crunch and you just need performance, and it doesn't matter for how long, like if it could crunch it for a couple of weeks or a couple of days, doesn't really matter. You just need to get this data report done, then a spot instance would be good for that. Azure Advisor for recommendations. And this slide deck will go out to you with the video at the end. Making Azure billing more predictable, optimize your resources, cost management, Azure reservation savings plans, budget alerts. Third-party tools can also help to manage your cost. I think I need to stop for Q&A.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Jason. We'll now open the floor for any questions that you guys might have. Feel free to submit them through chat or the Q&A window so that Jason can have to answer.
If there are no questions now, that's fine. If a question comes up later, please feel free to reach out. Partners@sherweb.com.
Or you could also reach out to your account manager or sales representative as well.
And we did put together a survey.
Yep. So the survey will pop up after the webinar concludes. So we could just take a few moments to complete it and provide your feedback on the webinar and share what you would like to see next from us as well. I would really appreciate that.
It'd be great.
Awesome. Well, if there's no questions, we can end the webinar. So thank you all for attending. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and we look forward to seeing you on our next one.
Thank you.